What's going on, everybody? Trying something new with my camera here, so let me know if this works out well. But today what I wanted to cover over is, as you can probably already tell, is the Federal Signal serial interface modules. How to hook them up, how the wiring works, what wire does what, command, functions, all that fun jazz. So, as you can see, I do have obviously a few of them, but this is the Federal Signal serial interface module, if I can talk correctly. Obviously it's just basically a solid aluminum box with a PCB board inside for where all the programming is done. You got your J1 switch here, switch 1, switch 2 with all the internal dip switches, and then the J3 box or the J3 switch, which is where the Ethernet will plug into for your Cat5 for your light bar. I'm going to refer to them as your smart bars, because now you don't have an independent wire to control each individual light head. In a sense, you technically kind of do still. So this is obviously the box for the interface module. You have 4 screws here, 2 and 2 on each side. That will basically holds this top cap married to the bottom portion of the box. So when you pull those 4 screws out, just like so, you get them pulled out. Now the top half comes off. All that is just a little sheet of aluminum with a sticker on it. Looks fancy and pretty. And now this is your inner workings of the serial interface module. Each one will be labeled as far as what version it is, how many volts and all that, so it kind of gives you all the information based off of, kind of gives you a brief idea as far as how new or recent that the programming has been as far as flashing and all that jazz. But this is your internal components. Nothing too major that you really have to do inside with these. The only key thing that you really have to do is right here. This is if your light bar is equipped with a traffic advisor function built into it. This is where you'll come in, basically pop this cap open and make this little adjustment to these 3 pins right here. So as you can see, there's one marked INT and there's another one marked EXT. Obviously self-explanatory. You got internal, external. So what you're basically telling the serial interface module from here is you're basically telling it with this little gizmo gadget here, which is basically just a metal piece encased in plastic. If you put it on your first 2 pins here, what you're basically doing is bridging these 2 together. You're basically telling the module, hey, I'm going to be using the built-in internal traffic advisor built into my light bar. So when you go through the wires, these little fun toys, you'll basically go through your instruction setup and say, hey, based off of my wire harness, we are going to use the traffic advisor built in to this module. If you want to do a separate box, so for example, if you wanted to use I think it's the smart siren from Federal Signal, you can actually take this little pin and switch it over just to cover the last pin only. So basically you're leaving the 2 internal pins uncovered and non-bridged. So now you're basically telling the module, in a nutshell, out of my entire wire harness, I'm now going to be utilizing an external controller or a separate controller for your traffic advisor function. If your light bar is equipped with a built-in traffic advisor, you're mainly going to be using this page here. So you'll typically have these 2 pins here covered up and bridged like so. So now you're going to look like that. See? So now you've got these 2 pins, stupid zoom, Now you got those two pins bridged together. So now you've told the module, we're going to be using this wire harness for my traffic advisor. So that's the only big thing that you're really going to need to pop this thing open. Past that, nothing else really needs to be in here. I think the J2 is for some of the flashing and programming from Federal Signal. I might be mistaken, but that's my wild guess there. Now, in regards to the J1 switch here, kind of fairly self-explanatory. When you get one of these, you're going to have the wire harness that comes with it. You're basically going to have two ends, one that has the connector, one that has the open wiring. If you have to ask me which goes into the box, slap yourself, because it's only one way to go in, and it just plugs in just like that. And then from there, on this end is where you can hook up to different switch control boxes, different switches or anything like that. Or, in my case, if you don't have a large enough switch box at the time, you build one. Yes, I used an old medical box, put my own switches on. Kind of inventive. So here I have the main wire harness coming in. I've got my main power wires coming in as well, so that way everything, each switch is getting fed individual power, ground, all that fun jazz. I won't go into that because that's just going to bore the daylights out of you. That's not why you're watching me right now. You're watching because you want to know how to program these things, how to set them up, change patterns, wire them up, all that fun stuff, right? At least that's what I'm interpreting. So, that's your J1 switch. That's where your wire harness gets plugged into. This button here, switch 1, this you really don't have to necessarily, you're not going to really use until you're actually programming the light bar. You're setting your patterns. You want to go, mode 1, you want pattern to look like this. You would push this button to say, oh, change pattern. Whoop, change pattern. Okay, I don't like that one. Change pattern. That's what that one's for. These dip switches here, each individual one has its own programming purpose. I'm going to tell you right now, 7 and 8 I've never used. I don't know exactly what they're for. All I know is they're supposedly for the intersection operation settings, is what Federal Signal says, but like I said, I've never really used them. Right now, everything is in the up, or what is called off position. So switch number 1, or dip switch 1, in the off position, your front and rear LEDs, as far those will be for your cutoff, front or rear cutoff. So this is basically saying, hey, when I apply my voltage to the specific control wires, it's going to turn off it's going to activate the cutoff switch. So if you got mode 1, 2, or 3 activated, and then you activate your cutoff wire for front cutoff, it'll turn off the front of the light bar and activate and keep the rear of the bar activated. If you put it in the down position, or what would be considered on, you're basically saying you want your front and rear LEDs to be turned on when a specific control wire is activated. Dip switch 2, always leave that on the off position. Never put it in the on position. Always leave it in off or up. Don't mess with that. Dip switch position 3 in the up. What this is basically going to do is when you activate your black and blue wire, it's going to activate your intersection lights. Which, my old eyes, that's mode 1. It's basically a black wire with a blue stripe, which I'm not going to bore you with. You can figure that out when you look on yours. So in the off position, or in the up/off, it's going to activate your intersection lights and a light bar test. So especially with your light bar test, it's basically going to go through each individual LED head and activate each one, basically putting the light bar in a test to make sure each thing is functioning. If you put dip switch position 3 in the down position or on position, that's mainly aimed toward like the Valor and the Vision SLR bars, because that's going to activate your scene lighting left, right, full front or anything like that. So if you have this, in my case for the Legend or the Argent S2 bars, you're going to leave that in the up position. Switch number 4, this is what you're going to need to activate depending on what you do here. So switch 4 is for internal or external signal master or traffic advisor. So if dip switch is in up position or technically off, that tells the module that you are using an external controller for your signal master. If you have position 4 in the down position or in the on position, that's telling the module that you're using the module to utilize your traffic signal. Switch 5, that really doesn't matter if that's up or down, truthfully, because that's mainly when you're using to program the module if you want it to go forward or backward on the patterns. If you have it in the up position, it's going to cycle through your selection of your flash patterns forward. If you put it down, it's going to cycle backward. So for example, if this, let's say this module was programmed with 30 different flash patterns. If I'm looking for, pattern 29 for an Argent S2 bar, then I would have that thing down, go through the programming, and I would use this switch and say, hey, go from pattern 1 to pattern 30, don't like it, wait a second or two, and then go to pattern 29. So that's mainly, like I said, if you know exactly which pattern you want for your bar, and for example, out of 30 patterns, I want pattern 20 instead of having it up to go pattern 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. You can switch it down, which will go from pattern 1 to pattern 30, 29, 28, 27, etc. So 5 isn't too big of a deal. It just is mainly used for programming. Position 6, this is going to be your important key one, because that's going to tell the module if you're in programming or operation setting. So operation means it's on the car or display, whatever you're using it for, and you want to switch it over to pattern 1 or mode 1, mode 2, it's going to go to whatever it was programmed. If you flip number 6 in the down position, you're telling it, I'm programming. I'm in programming mode. So now you'll be able to go through and change the patterns. And I'll show you how to do that here in a minute. Positions 7 and 8, like I said, I don't know. All I know is they're for the intersection operational settings. So I'm assuming that means intersection mode, but I could be wrong. So if somebody knows exactly, feel free to put it in the comments. Let everybody else know. At this point in time, I don't know exactly what that covers. And then obviously the last slot, that's where your Cat 5 goes into. If you can't figure that out, slap yourself. Nah, I'm kidding. Don't slap yourself. So anyways, like I said, so when you get your module with your bar, or if you get a bar without the module and you get a new one off eBay, or you call Federal Signal to get them to send you one, it'll have everything ready to go. You'll have the module, you'll have the wire harness itself that will plug in with the module. Obviously it won't come with any ends. I just did this for my test setup. It'll mainly look like that. You'll also get your pamphlet that lets you know, based on each color wire, what option or mode it is programmed and set up for. Obviously from my, like on this particular one, the red all the way down to red-green is for the traffic advisor. Everything else, obviously up here, you got modes 3, 2, 1. If you have a steady burn option built into the light bar, which you're going to know if you do or not. Your intersection lights, again, this is mainly toward a lot of the Valor or the Vision SLRs. As far as if you're doing scene light left or right or anything like that, it gives you the update saying, hey, remember, switch 3 has to be in the down position, which we covered. And then again, goes into takedowns, alleys, all that fun stuff. And it even shows you how to wire everything up correctly and also set up all your different fuses, which, yes, the user has to supply yourself. Federal Signal does not give you any fuses. Typically when you order a bar, they typically will send you one fuse holder for the actual light bar itself. Everything else, as far as like all these, you have to supply yourself. So, but again, that's not a big deal. I digress. Everything else inside, as far as the paperwork, it does go over and show you everything, instructions full, which you can also gain access to these instructions on Federal's website. So you just go to fedsig.com and you can go into the resources, and this will give you the information that you can download this and print this off yourself. I will try to leave a link in the description so that way you can see everything yourself. I'm trying to go through and show some of these pages as well. So if you see a page that you like, feel free to pause the video, take a screenshot, boom, print it out, and you're good to go. So yeah, that is the main information for the module. In regards to programming it, how you get to programming. This is the fun part. Let me show you how to do that. So to get access to your programming, remember what I was telling you about position 6? Get yourself like a little small screwdriver, a little flathead, or anything that you can barely pop up in there. And take number 6 and flip it to the on position or down position. Obviously for me, most of the time, most of my light bars, I'm going to always have position number 4 in the on position as well, to say, hey, I'm going to use my built-in traffic advisor using my module. But other than that, right now I've got it set to programming, so all I'd have to do, this is it. This is all that you have to do, is put switch number 6 down to the programming mode, and then put the car or supply power to the light bar, and now you're activated in programming. So that's how to get into programming. Once you are in programming, these modules are a little finicky. What you end up having to do is, once you've got yourself entered into programming, or in this case, which we can do to this one, number 6. So once you're in programming and you've got your switch hooked up, you got your Cat 5 hooked up in there. Now you can't go in and program, I want to do mode 1 or I want to do mode 2. The light bar will only function if you, or program correctly I should say, in a specific order. You have to activate mode 3 first, then activate mode 2, then activate mode 1. So each of those color configurations. So mode 3 is your black wire with red stripe, which is this little guy here. So I don't know if you can see too well, but your main black wire with the white stripe in it. So that's mode 3. So you have to supply power to this first. Obviously, you'll have your power on the white wire, your ground on, your black and your black-white wire, power, ground, and then supply your 12-volt power to mode 3. The light bar will light up in whatever pattern it's already set on. And then from there, if you decide you do not like that pattern, you can use this button, push it. The light bar will turn off for a brief moment and then come back on to showcase the next pattern. Depending what you do on switch 5, whether you cycle forward or backwards, it's just going to be that way. So if you know exactly which pattern you want, then use that switch to help you out. If you're not sure and you just want to browse through all the patterns, then that switch doesn't matter. Just browse through them. Push that switch, the light bar will briefly turn off and then come back on about a second and a half later and show you the next pattern. I always say let it cycle and run the pattern for about 2-3 seconds and then hit the switch again, and then the bar will flip off and show you the next pattern. So that's how to do the programming. If, let's say, you've got mode 3 and 2 dialed in and that's all you want to do is just do mode 1, then you don't have to worry about going in and activating 3, then shutting it off, and then activating 2, which is going to be your blue and white wire, which is this little guy here. So see how you got blue and the white stripe? This one here, which is mode 1, which is just blue, so there's no white or any other colors. So this is mode 1, mode 2. I've done it several times before. If I wanted to just change mode 2, if mode 3 was good and mode 1 was good, all I had to do was just activate power to mode 2, change my pattern, shut it off, and then when you're done programming, all you have to do is, so for example, if the bar is on the car, take the key out of the ignition, turn it in off, pull the key out, boom, stops power. Then come over to your module, take switch 6, flip it up, and then when you put your key back in and put it in the on position, now it's in operation mode. If you're somebody like me that just has bars on display, same thing. Turn power on, do your programming, turn power off to the bar, make sure there's no more power, and then flip the switch up, and boom, now you're back into operation mode. So now you can go back through and start watching the different patterns for you. So, all right, so that's how to program and change the patterns for your light bar. Again, there's a lot more options that you can set everything up with. A lot more different functionalities we can go into, but believe me, you do not want to be sitting here for over an hour while I try to show you every square inch. Go to Federal Signal's website. Like I said, I'll try to get you guys the link, and that way you can actually look at all the paperwork and see what things do different things. There's also, I'm sure, a few different YouTube videos of all the patterns combined, so that way you can watch a 10-20 minute clip of the actual light bars and all their pattern selections. The other thing I have found that is a little bit easier, but it is a lot more expensive, and I really wish I can get my hands on one, is the new Federal Signal, I believe the Smart Sirens, or the Platinum Series Smart Sirens, where basically it's you just basically take the controller, plug it into your computer, and boop, 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 some software. You can actually program everything yourself, which is so much easier than having to do this setup where you're having to activate wire by wire. But in the meantime, who cares? Now, let me kind of get things a little set up here, and I will show you and utilize my Argent S2 bar and show you guys how to go through the programming and what everything looks like. So let me get that set up. Let's show you guys how to do that in person so you can visually see everything. So what we're going to do is, I've actually got some wires on standby. So I've got my main power wires here. These are my main power wires right here. So let's get these hooked up. Black to black for ground, red to red for power. Cat 5 for communications and data. And you can see my switches here. So you can see 1 and 2 and 3 are all up. In the off position, switch number 4 is down in the on position to signify for an internal traffic advisor setup, and everything else is in the off position. So this showcases right now that I am currently utilizing in operation mode. So now, and yes, this looks janky as all heck, but hey, it worked for what I was doing at the time. So I have everything labeled as far as what I wanted. Right alleys, takedowns, you know, self-explanatory. Code 1, 2, which you can physically see my light go off in the background. So let me get the camera readjusted real quick and actually unplug one of these wires here. I don't technically have to unplug one of these power wires. Usually when you unplug the Cat 5, it's not going to hurt nothing. That will be enough, but I do everything. Let's see, switch 6. Okay, now I just put myself in programming mode. So all I have to do now is put power back to everything. Hook my Cat 5 back up. Okay, so now my module has power, the light bar has power. Let me get the camera readjusted and I'll show you how to change these patterns for you. So, let's do that. Okay, so here is my Argent S2 light bar. So now I'm already in programming. So now if I wanted to, obviously we'll go through mode 3. I think I like that. Not really, just because it's kind of annoying to watch the flashing takedowns because of the way I have it set up. But we'll jump into mode 2. Now, so that's the pattern. Now I can go over to switch number 2. Little button down there. Give that a little push. Now you see how it briefly shut off for about a second or two? Now it's on the next pattern. I can press it again. Light bar shuts off. It goes through its pattern selection and then picks up there to showcase a new pattern for you. And then you can just keep scrolling through. This will work for this bar. It'll also work for the Legend light bars if you have a Veiler. Basically any of the smart, I call them smart bars, any of the light bars that utilize the serial interface modules with the Cat 5 connections, you'll be able to do this and make everything work, change your patterns, go through programming mode, and get the bar more to what you want. So obviously here I've got everything set up as solid. Then I can scroll through the different patterns. Right now it's doing, so this is a prime example of the light bar test. It's going through lighting up each individual module to make sure each one is physically working. Now the reason you didn't see is either this one or this one on the blue side and the red side not light up, because those ones were set up for the California solid red, whatever programming that California has for these bars. But hope this was extremely helpful. I do apologize the video was a little lengthy. I think we're pushing almost 28 minutes, 29 minutes or so. I do appreciate everybody watching. If you have any further questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments. Let me know what you think. And you guys have yourselves a wonderful one and enjoy them light bars out there.